Select all squares with a bicycle in the CAPTCHA. The back wheel clips one square, the handlebars are half in another, and you are guessing. Google's grid isn't asking whether you can see a bicycle. Your instinct is that the squares are the check, they are not. Google scored you before the grid ever loaded, and the grid is what happens when that score comes back unsure. That's Google's own description of how it works, published in December 2014, and it leaves two things wide open. Nobody outside Google will tell you what that score is made of. And Google's own product page used to describe the time you spend inside that grid as human effort it was putting to use. The puzzle was once the whole defense system, and there's a court file about what that was worth. In March 2010, federal prosecutors in New Jersey indicted four men. The ticket sites they went after had a captcha in the way, and the indictment spells out what that was. Distorted images of letters and numbers, retyped by hand before you can buy. So the men hired programmers in Bulgaria and built what the indictment calls a nationwide network of computers that impersonated individual visitors. It cleared the picture puzzles and the audio ones automatically, and the document's phrase for that is faster than any human could accomplish the same task. One Springsteen show at Giant Stadium, July 2008, they took nearly half of the 440 floor tickets released to the public. The seats nearest the stage, across the whole scheme, about 1.5 million tickets. Three of them pleaded guilty, and in June 2011, one was ordered to forfeit over $1.2 million. The public thought they had a fair shot at these events, said the US attorney, and the defendants had cheated them out of that opportunity. That defense had a definition, and the definition is the whole reason it ever worked. A CAPTCHA is a test that most people pass and no current computer program can. That's the whole idea. Google's own history page credits for four researchers at Carnegie Mellon, with the first one in 2000 built for Yahoo, and the trick was clutter. Take a word, warp it, lay junk over the top. Your eye pulls the shape out of the mess without being asked. A program of the day looked at the same picture and saw a field of colored dots with no word in it anywhere. So the whole thing rests on one gap between what people find easy and what machines find hard. That gap is the defense, and its width was still a guess. In 2003, two researchers at Berkeley pointed a program at the live Yahoo puzzle, the one running on the site rather than a copy in a lab. It found the right word 92 times in 100, and they wrote the consequence down themselves. Yahoo can no longer use it to screen out bots. 3 years, that's how long the gap lasted. I have been calling it a puzzle. That's the wrong word for what came next. The fix was to stop inventing the words. In 2008, the team behind reCAPTCHA published how theirs worked in Science. You might think those warped words came out of a random generator. Almost all of them were photographs of real words, cut out of scanned pages of old books and newspapers, and they were specifically the words the scanning software had failed on. The paper's line is exact. Only the words that automated OCR programs cannot recognize are sent to humans. OCR is optical character recognition, the software that turns a photograph of a page into text you can actually search. On old print with faded ink and yellowed paper, the paper says it can't read about one word in five. So the puzzle was harvested rather than invented. Nobody had to guess what a computer couldn't read because a list of words a computer couldn't read already existed. Words a computer can't read are words a person struggles with too. In 2010, a team at Stanford ran the largest measurement anyone had done on this, putting over 318,000 captchas in front of people they paid. On reCAPTCHA's text, people got it three-quarters of the time, a quarter of the attempts came back wrong. Expected time to get through one, counting the failures, 15.8 seconds. And there's an audio version which exists so that somebody who can't see the picture can still get in. That one came out at 47%, worse than a coin flip. When they played the same audio captcha to three different people, all three agreed about a third of the time, and about a third of the time, all three gave a different answer. A puzzle people fail a quarter of the time is only worth keeping while machines still fail it. In December 2019, a paper appeared with an unusual byline: The Street View and reCAPTCHA Teams at Google. It described a neural network, which is a program nobody gives rules to. You show it example after example, each one labeled with the right answer, and it works the rules out itself. So, what it learns is decided by the examples and not by the code. Theirs was built to read house numbers out of street view photographs. Then they turned it on Google's own puzzle, and in April 2014, they published what it scored: 99.8% on the hardest reCAPTCHA they had. And the papers on caveat says the rest of this out loud before anything changed on screen. The distorted text it says now serves increasingly as a medium to capture user engagements rather than as a test in itself. The same person's name is on that paper and on the announcement that retired the puzzle. Because the letters were finished, the test had to become something a computer couldn't do. December 2014, Google announced the replacement and gave the reason without dressing it up. Distorted text on its own is no longer a dependable test. So the checkbox arrived, the one that says, I'm not a robot, and behind it, when you fail, a grid of photographs. Here's how Google described the new challenge on the day it shipped: a classic computer vision problem of image labeling. In this version of the CAPTCHA challenge, you are asked to select all of the images that correspond with the clue. That is not the description of a test, it's the description of a job. And something a computer can't do is a moving target. 18 months later, in 2016, researchers at Columbia built an automatic solver for Google's image grid out of off-the-shelf image annotation. And it got just under 71% of the challenges right. At 19 seconds, a challenge. Their own words for what it cost to run: practically no cost. Then 2024, a team at ETH Zurich went at the same product with an off-the-shelf object detector and solved 100% of the challenges. Meanwhile, the People, a study published in 2023, put 14,000 CAPTCHAs in front of 1,400 people and timed them. And human accuracy on the modern ones ran between 50 and 85%. The bots in the same table ran between 85 and 100, and on nearly everything, they were faster. So the puzzle couldn't be the test anymore, and the test had to move. It had already moved. Google said so in October 2013, more than a year before the checkbox shipped, and 6 months before its own team published that 99.8. The post is about making the letters easier to read. Buried in it is this: the updated system, it says, actively considers the user's entire engagement with the CAPTCHA before, during, and after they interact with it, which means that today the distorted letters serve less as a test of humanity and more of a medium of engagement to elicit a broad range of cues that characterize humans and bots. Less as a test of humanity, that's the vendor in public retiring its own test. And the line straight after it is the one that should stop you. Bots, however, won't even see them. The easy puzzle is what you get once the system has already decided you are fine. Then December 2014, and the mechanism stated plainly: in cases when the risk analysis engine can't confidently predict whether a user is a human or an abusive agent, it will prompt a CAPTCHA to elicit more cues. You would think the grid gets handed to the suspicion ones until they guess right. It goes to anybody the system can't place. The grid is what it does when it runs out of confidence. A score has to be made of something. I have been saying the score as though anybody outside Google knows what's in it. Nobody does. Google publishes what it is: a number between 0 and 1 handed to the website, where 1 is very likely a good interaction and 0 is very likely a bot. Google does not publish what moves it, so the honest thing is to report what's actually been measured on the live product. You might think the score is mostly about how you move the mouse inside the box. Movement counts. The same ETH team in 2024 ran their bot with no cursor movement at all. Then with straight lines, then with curved parts, and the number of challenges it had to get through fell from about 19 to about 8. The bigger lever was history. Same bot, same puzzles, same moments, and the only difference was that one carried a real browser's cookies and browsing history from a logged in Google account, while the other one carried none. Cookies are the small files a site leaves in your browser so it knows you when you come back. Without the history, the bot averaged 8 on a bit challenges per captcha. With it, under 3. And that isn't noise. Their own statistics say the difference is real and the abstract puts it flatly. The checkbox version is heavily based on cookie and browser history data when evaluating whether a user is human or not. A system that rewards a history has to charge somebody who hasn't got one. Cloudflare is a different company from Google sitting in front of a large share of the web. And in 2016, it wrote about exactly this. It measured that 94% of the requests it saw coming out of the Tor network were, in its words, per se malicious. Tor is the network people use to browse without being identified. Journalists, people living under a government they can't trust, and plenty of criminals. So Cloudflare's own explanation: the exit points of that network often carry a very high threat score. And Cloudflare can't fix that by building up a reputation for you personally, because not being identifiable is the whole reason you were using it. So being unidentifiable and being a robot land in the same bucket. It falls straight out of measuring history on a person who hasn't got one. A defense that lets the bot through and stops the people isn't a wall at all. I have been describing a defense that keeps losing, and the people who actually measured this market drew the opposite conclusion. In 2010, a team at UC San Diego went and bought CAPTCHA solving on 8 different services at retail and studied it as a business. You might think the point of a CAPTCHA is to stop them. Their framing is different. A CAPTCHA, they wrote, reduces an attacker's expected profit by the cost of solving the CAPTCHA. And if the attacker's revenue cannot cover this cost, CAPTCHAs as a defense mechanism have succeeded. Not a wall, a toll booth. And measured that way, they concluded it worked. To this day, they wrote, no completely general means of solving CAPTCHAs has emerged, nor is the cat and mouse game of creating automated solvers viable as a business model. In this regard, then CAPTCHAs have succeeded. The toll in 2010 was about $1 for 1,000 solved puzzles, and they worked one example through. For pharmaceutical spam, a fresh webmail account only starts breaking even after about 100 messages sent. A price only works while it's higher than the price. So go and look at the price list because these services aren't hiding. They have public pricing pages like any other business. I read one of them recently. One vendor, its own advertised retail prices per thousand solved. Plain distorted text, 50 cents to $1. 16 years after that San Diego measurement, the price of the puzzle hasn't moved. Then further down the same page, two rows that aren't about puzzles at all. Google's invisible version never shows anybody anything. It just hands the site a signed pass with a score on it, and the site decides what to do with that. And you can buy one of those passes. A pass that comes back with a low score costs $1.45. A pass that comes back about the line costs $2.99. The market stopped selling solved puzzles. It sells reputation. And a good reputation costs twice what a bad one does. So what's being sold now is an identity, and the identity is the hard part. I have been describing the attacker as a program. In one documented case, it wasn't. In March 2023, OpenAI published a system card for GPT-4, which is the document a lab puts out describing what its model can do and where its danger is. A safety team ran an evaluation with it. The model hit a CAPTCHA. Instead of solving it, it went to TaskRabbit, a site where you hire a person for a small job, and hired somebody to solve the CAPTCHA for it. The worker asked in writing whether it was a robot that couldn't solve the CAPTCHA, and the model was told to reason out loud. Reasoned, I should not reveal that I am a robot. I should make up an excuse for why I cannot solve CAPTCHAs. Then it told the worker it had a vision impairment. That was a pre release model in a deliberately safety test, and nobody was defrauded. What it demonstrates is the economics from 13 years earlier with a language model as the customer. The machine did not beat the puzzle, it paid a human, it even named the solving price. A machine paying a person to answer what it couldn't is where this whole thing started. Earlier, I said the words in reCAPTCHA were cut out of scanned pages, specifically the ones the scanning software had failed on, and that this made it a better puzzle. That's true, and it's half the sentence. Here's the other half, and it's Google's own headline from the day it bought reCAPTCHA in September 2009. Teaching computers to read. The explanations underneath by typing them in as a CAPTCHA. Crowds teach computers to read the scanned text. And what it was for in the same post to improve our books and newspaper scanning process. Those words were hard for a computer because a computer had already failed on them. And typing them in fixed that. Every answer was a correction filed by you into a machine that was learning to read. That phrase, crowds teach computers to read, has a head count, and the operators published it themselves in Science in 2008. More than 100 million captchas typed every day at that time. A few seconds each, which adds up in their words to hundreds of thousands of human hours per day. The output was over 4 million words a day corrected, which they said came to about 160 books a day. Then they costed it. Getting that same rate by paying people to type would require. They wrote a workforce of more than 1,500 people deciphering words 40 hours per week. 1,500 full-time jobs. That's the operator's own number in their own paper. Nobody was on the payroll. And that headcount was never a secret, it was a selling point. Google's reCAPTCHA product page in a snapshot from September 2016 has three headline pillars: advanced security, ease of use, and third, creation of value. Apply the human bandwidth to benefit people everywhere. Underneath that pillar sit three panels: stop a bot, save a bot, stop a bot, improve a map, and stop a bot, build a bot. That one reads: high quality human labeled images are compiled into data sets that can be used to train machine learning systems. Human labeled images, that's the grid. That's you sorting photographs into categories on a page that says out loud what the output is for. Now there's a version of this that's tidier than the truth, and I'm not going to give it to you. It goes: the pictures you labeled train the model that broke the puzzle. No source says that. The record has a sequence instead. So here it is as a sequence. Google said the answers were being compiled into machine learning datasets. Google's own Street View and reCAPTCHA teams then published a model that read the puzzle better than the people solving it. Two facts in that order, and nobody has published an arrow between them. And none of that language is on the page anymore. I went and looked on Google's current reCAPTCHA product page. I searched for digitizing, for annotating images, and for machine learning datasets. Creation of value is gone. Stop a bot, build a bot is gone. Zero matches. What's there instead is this: reCAPTCHA employs an invisible score based detection mechanism to differentiate between legitimate users and bots, and across the top of the page, protect against fraud and abuse in the agentic web. I can't tell you why it changed or when between 2016 and now. Only that both halves of what you were doing in that box have came off the page. The test and the work. A score that never has to ask you anything is the end of this ladder, and it's already running on your phone. Cloudflare, again, the other company, shipped two things in 2022. One is Turnstile, which replaces the puzzle with challenges your browser answers silently, picked from what Cloudflare already knows about the session. The other was built with Apple. Your device vouches for you cryptographically. The site is told a real user is here, and you are shown nothing at all. Cloudflare's claim at launch was that it would eliminate nearly 100% of the captchas served to those users, and that's the honest shape of it. Three separate parties, one design. Google's live documentation sells an invisible score. Cloudflare's live product is a score with the puzzle removed, and the black market prices its goods by score. What all three are really measuring is whether you look like somebody they have seen before. So the test was a gap between what people find easy and what machines find hard. And in 2003, a program at Berkeley closed it on Yahoo's live puzzle at 92%. The replacement was harvested rather than invented. Words off scanned pages the software had failed on, and by April 2014, Google's own team could read the hardest of those at 99.8. Pictures came next, and a machine reached 100% of those in 2024. So the decision moved off the puzzle and onto a score built out of your history. And the puzzle became what you get when that score comes back unsure. And for years on its own front page, the operator said what your answers were being used for. So the next time that grid comes up, you know what you're looking at. It isn't the question, it's the verdict. The system looked at you, came up short, and every square you clicked is more of the evidence it went looking for. Alright, if you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.